kind of like a Joe Sixpack type guy, not necessarily the most sophisticated, but a nice enough man. But they were having a conversation, and the sort of Joe Sixpack guy was saying, what's it all about? And the mailman was something like, well, what do you mean? He said, well, like, what's it all about? Why are we here? And the mailman said something along the lines, I'm paraphrasing. He said, well, like some people believe in reincarnation, and you continually come back and back, and you try to get to a higher state. And the other guy goes, well, like Colorado? So, and the purpose doesn't necessarily mean a goal. Goals are important. As they say, what gets measured improves, or something like that. Yeah. So a purpose is the reason for which something is done. You may have a goal, but what's your motivation behind that goal? And or your intention, your purpose. And this is a link to a webinar. There's a fellow named Robert Leiter who's been studying this for 5 decades. And he initially started participating in the Outward Bound programs. Probably heard of those. Kind of go on these outdoor treks in various locations, and it's bonding with people and challenging, physically and mentally challenging circumstances that helps build character and forge relationships. And he was in Africa, in the what is it, Zimbabwe? Is that a country, or was it Zimbabwe? And then there's some famous mountains, or I don't know, I can't remember the names. Kalahari, maybe that's a desert. What is it? Kilimanjaro, yeah. So he's trained, and he learned how to speak Swahili, and he was speaking with one of the elders of this village, and they were going on some excursion, and part of his conversation, he was asking all these questions to this elder of the tribe, and he said, you're asking me so many questions, let me ask you a question. And he said, what are the 2 most important days of your life? And the man said, well, the day you were born, the day you die. And he said, you came all the way from America, and that's the best you got? He said, well, you got half of it right, the day you're born, but the second most important day is the day you discover your purpose. And sometimes we maybe call it a calling. And most significantly, a purpose that is outside of oneself. What is my contribution to the world or to my community? And studies have shown that, especially elderly people, when they retire, if they don't have a purpose, they have a 2.4 times more likely to develop dementia within 7 years. The physical ramifications of not having that purpose is there. The biochemistry of the brain, antibodies are, when a person who has purpose, they have an increase in optimism, a decrease in loneliness, an increase in resilience. When we have pain, when we're suffering, oftentimes, we become self-absorbed in our suffering. And when we have a higher purpose, especially in regard to helping others in their trials and tribulations in life. To have a purpose of service, and in Sanskrit the word is seva, with selfless service. I'm serving for the sake of serving. I'm not expecting something in return. This is a core principle in any progressive life, that our ultimate identity is that we are meant to give service to others. Ultimately, the ultimate service, samsiddhir haritoshanam, is to serve God. And downstream, because all living beings are emanating from God, that necessarily means service to all living beings, not just, God's not in a vacuum. I serve God and to hell with everybody else. That's sort of a typical of an immature spiritual practitioner. Not to dismiss, you have to start somewhere, but they tend to focus more on God and not really care so much about other people. It's kind of like my thing. It's my own little private world, and there is room for that. But the outgrowth of developing our relationship with God, our love for God, is that one feels compassion for other living entities, not just humans, but all living beings. And Saint Francis was well known for his universal love for brother moon, sister sun, brother bear, sister deer. And our Srila Prabhupada said, when was told that was Saint Francis's view, he said, "Oh, that's real God consciousness. You see everything in relationship to God. You see everything connected to God." So this service, and in fact, the even more important than directly service to God is to serve the children of God. Just like in any normal situation in this world, if you want to please someone, if you do some act of kindness for someone who's very dear to that person, then naturally they will feel indebted to you. And remember the old, dating myself, but the milk carton kids, the missing children. They had I guess it was when they had the cardboard milk containers. Maybe they still do. Oh, yes, they still do. But, imagine if you were one of the people who found one of those missing children. Or sometimes you see on the telephone poles, there's a little poster. It says, "Have you seen this person?" The people who love that person are, heartbroken. They've lost their connection with their loved one. So imagine what type of relationship you would have if you found that missing person and you brought them, back to their loved one. They would be so indebted, so pleased. So in the Bhagavad Gita, toward the end, Krishna says, "Yayidam paramanguyam mad bhakteshva vidashyati bhaktimayi param kritva mami vaishyasya samshaya." That one who explains the supreme secret, the science of yoga, how to reconnect with God, if we're able to share that knowledge with others, your own salvation is assured. You don't have to worry about your own problems. When you try to help other people solve their problems, your problems are automatically solved because you will be empowered with mercy, with grace of God, a strength that is the really only way that we can overcome the tremendous obstacles that are, especially now, confronting us in the world today. And I was looking a little bit about the Renaissance, and Renaissance is a French word which means rebirth. It was a return to values of classical antiquity, Greece and Rome. There was the Middle Ages were sort of a dark period, and there was this, they call it the Great Awakening. There was a revisiting of classical art and philosophy and science and so on. And simultaneously, there was a spiritual renaissance in India right at the same time. 1486 was the appearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the golden avatar, who especially propagated this chanting of the holy names of the Lord, which one great devotee, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, in reference to this avatar of Sri Chaitanya, he says, Haranama Krishna Nama Gana Dana Karanam, Shoka Moha Loba Tapa Sarva Vigdanashanam, Pada Padma Labda Bhakta Vrinda Bhakta Dayanim, Gora Murtam Ashunami Namasutta Dayanim. He said, I offer my respects to that supreme person, that golden avatar who has appeared to give the holy name of Krishna to the living entities tormented by Kali. That holy name is auspicious to the world, and it destroys all obstacles, along with the miseries of lamentation, illusion, and greed. So this Hare Krishna mantra, this is a medicine. This is a soothing balm for the parched. We're all the oppression of Kali Yuga. I mean, just like the 20th century was such a horrific century, 2 world wars and some of the most heinous tyrants in history. Hitler, Stalin, Mao Zedong. I mean, these were some evil dudes who created havoc and so much suffering. But what was born of some of that, one of the greatest literary pieces came out of that suffering of Hitler's heinous concentration camps and trying to kill the Jews. There was this gentleman, Viktor Frankl, who was a psychologist, and he wrote a very book called Man's Search for Meaning. And I was listening to a little a video on YouTube. He said that this gentleman who was speaking about purpose, he said that book changed his life. He said, he's my hero, changed the trajectory of my life. And he's an educator himself, and he is trying to follow in Viktor Frankl's footsteps. So now how does that relate to, okay, yeah, psychology is nice, purpose and so on. How does it relate to our spiritual practice? And, going back to this idea of, being oppressed by tyrants, and, we don't want to, we want to be free. Nobody likes to be, even a cockroach. I unfortunately have to deal with cockroaches occasionally in my building. And so this morning I was trying to be merciful to the cockroach. I put the cup over him, and then you slide a little, piece of something underneath and send them outside. But he was frantically trying to get away. Nobody wants to be caged up. Nobody wants to be oppressed. This is the nature of the living entity. We want to be free. In Sanskrit, the word is moksha, liberation. We don't want to suffer. We don't want to be restricted in our happiness and our movement and so on. So it was Patrick Henry, the statesman, famously, even 1775, he was a politician and a lawyer, and he was, in Virginia. And his most famous quote was, "Give me liberty or give me death." So, but the relative freedom that's afforded by, making some political adjustment or, these regimes, the largest empire in history is the British Empire. And its peak was in 1920. They were ruling over 23% of the world's population. That was only 100 years ago, 105 years ago to be exact. A quarter of the people of the world were under the control of Great Britain. Where are they now? Who cares? I mean, with all due respect to the Queen and King, but what is their influence now? These it comes and goes. Power, control. America, where was America in 1920? America was not a world power at that point. It wasn't until after World War II that America, Great Britain, and the Soviet Union emerged as the world superpowers. And then 1991, with the collapse of the Soviet Union, America emerged. But how long is this going to last? You know? So whatever freedom, relative freedoms we have, which are noble causes, civil rights, abolishing slavery, these are all noble causes, but they're all relative. They're not the real liberation or freedom that we want. And beyond the oppressors of war and politicians and so on, how about the tyranny of our own mind? There's a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam that says, all the senses have been under the control of the mind since time immemorial, and the mind itself never comes under the sway of any other. He is stronger than the strongest, and his godlike power is fearsome. Therefore, anyone who can bring the mind under control becomes the master of all the senses. I was listening to a talk this morning by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, and he was saying, just like in a dream, you know, you're imagining you're being attacked by a tiger or whatever, or it could be, you know, a happy dream or whatever. And it's real in the sense that, you know, sometimes you'll wake up and you're, you know, maybe shaking, you're sweating and, you know, oh my God. And then you realize, oh, it was just a dream. But while you were in the dream, it was very real and you had emotional responses to that, but it was an irrational response. It was a real feeling, but it was not based on reality. It was a dream. So the suffering in this world, the enjoyment in this world, Krishna describes, it's a mental concoction. It's all in your mind. You know, it's not reality. It's temporary. It's real in the sense that as much as we identify with the dream at night, we identify with the dream during the day, but there's these irrational responses. It's not the permanent reality. And again, that doesn't mean we don't address problems in the world. And, you know, there are genuine problems in the world. We don't say, oh, it's just a dream, you know. But ultimately, we all have to leave this dream, this body, and this false identification with the body and the mind. You know, it's a composite of a subtle body and the gross physical body. So elsewhere in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes that the mind can be the worst enemy or the best friend when the mind is under control by higher intelligence. Sometimes Krishna consciousness is referred to as buddhi yoga. It's like Buddha, the learned one. Buddhi means intelligence. So with higher intelligence, we can, fortified with hearing from great souls, spiritual knowledge, we can fortify our intelligence. And then the analogy of the chariot of the body is a very classic example of our predicament in this material world, that we're riding on a chariot and the 5 horses of the chariot represent our senses, our eyes, nose, sense of touch, you know, the 5, whatever, you know. Can't think of them right now. Anyway, the 5 horses. And then the reins is the mind, and intelligence is the driver. So if you don't have strong intelligence, then what happens is you let go of the reins and then the horses go wild and you're in trouble, you know, careening off the road. You can't, destination is, it's a dangerous, a precarious, you know, we live in a precarious situation if our mind is not under control. And getting back to, I have ample experience of grappling with the mind and the tyranny of the mind and the suffering of the mind. And not to minimize it, but I did try to commit suicide when I was in high school. I was suffering tremendously. That, you know, that oppression of the mind, having no light at the end of the tunnel, the darkness of that type of oppression in the mind is, it's practically the worst suffering is mental torment. So it's practically at epidemic levels now. People are suffering so much on the mental platform, depression and anxiety. I have one friend he's going for the last 8 or 9 months. Hasn't been able to sleep, like a solid night's sleep. He's in so much anxiety. And there was a movie I was watching some time ago, and there was a group of people at a restaurant, and some lady comes up to join the table, and she's shuffling through her purse, and she goes, "Oh, dang, I forgot my Prozac." And all the other people at the table, "Yeah, I got some." Half the country, or I don't know what the statistics are, but there's a lot of people, who are resorting to some sort of, pharmaceuticals to deal with their anxieties and their unhappiness, their loneliness, their lack of purpose. So the power of purpose, as gentleman Richard Leader, he said, here's the napkin formula. He said he was in a taxi. He was going to present at some gathering, and the taxi cab driver was asking him, what are you going to talk about? And he said, whistle while you work. And he said, yeah, right. I'm grinding it out in this job, anyways, talk about purpose and, why are you doing this? And he said, the cab driver said, well, I retired and I was going out of my mind bored. So I got this job driving Uber so I could be around some people, just to get out, So, anyways, this cab driver asked him sort of like, what's the secret? What's your formula? And he said, well, that's, I do whole presentations on this. I'll give you it in a nutshell. And he said, you take your gifts, your passion, and your values. If you look at what God has given you, the gifts that everybody has a gift or gifts. And then something you're passionate about. Rupa Goswami says you have to be enthusiastic. Find something you're passionate about. Take your gifts and work in an arena where your values are not compromised. That will give you purpose. And that calling, that purpose, the resilience that you will gain will help us overcome our own suffering, whether it be mental, physical. It will get us out of our own head. That's a huge thing, to move out of your head. No small task. And so I'd like to end with this prayer that was offered by Prahlad Maharaj, and this ties in with the idea of getting out of our self-absorption with our own problems. So Prahlad Maharaj says, may there be good fortune throughout the universe. May all envious persons be pacified. May all living entities become calm by practicing bhakti yoga. For by accepting devotional service, they will think of each other's welfare. Therefore, let us all engage in the service of the Supreme Transcendence, Lord Sri Krishna, and always remain absorbed in thought of him. So that, through this last year has been kind of a tough year. I had to have dental implants that failed, and there's probably a place in hell where there's a special slot where they try to give you dental implants that fail. And it was a real, I'm still in the middle of it. I had, both of them failed. The second attempt, this one is okay, but I still have this one. And then I broke my foot. I was running to catch the trolley and totally, I'm 65 years old and I'm running like a madman across the street. The light had just, it was just, the crosswalk, it's going 10, 9, 8, 7. And I'm like, and I saw the trolley across the street. I'm like, go for it, and I'm running at, breakneck speed. stepped on the outside of my ankle, and as I went down, it went crack. And so that, it's been about 4 months. It's still, it's pretty much healed, but it still hurts. I'm not back to normal and may never be back to normal. And I have ongoing problems with my digestion. And it's just like, man, you can't, like, what next? It's just, and I started some time ago, I started a practice of praying for others. And it wasn't something that I had really been taught exclusive, or it wasn't emphasized. It was always kind of about, praying for your own salvation, so to speak, or, like my own, God help me with my problems, And I started praying for others, and there was sort of like a cumulative effect. And as I increased that practice, it sort of reached like a critical mass where I feel like there was sort of like an opportunity that opened up, that my heart was opening up, that I could receive blessings from God that I was previously not able to receive. The mercy is always available, just like the sun is always available. But if you stay inside a house, you can't take advantage of the sun. So there's an opening of the heart when we get out of our self-absorption with our problems and we start to be concerned about the welfare of others and helping the world become a better place, one person at a time. We don't, Mother Teresa says, we're not all called to do great things, but we can do small things with great love. So we can have a significant change in the world if we simply get out of our self-absorption in our own problems. And I know we're all suffering. And it's not to minimize your suffering. And if you are suffering, I offer prayers to all living beings this is what Prahlad Maharaj said. I'm praying for the good fortune throughout the whole universe. We can pray like this. We can offer prayers that all living beings can have a better life and can become peaceful. And these envious, tyrannical people will be pacified, by the mercy of God. So it's an opportunity. And we could say, boy, why is, the problem of evil? God's all benevolent, all powerful, all good. Why is there so much evil? It's like people have been asking that question for thousands and thousands of years. Like, it's, like, oh, I'm so intelligent that I'm asking this question. No, it's been asked for thousands of years. But if we actually see that it's an opportunity for us to grow, instead of getting old, we can grow old. When you get older, you're supposed to have a bigger heart. That's real maturity, that you're getting out of your self-absorption and that you're mentoring other people, elders. Classically, like, I don't know, in the Native American tribes, we smoke a peace pipe with the elders, or, they had wisdom to share with the younger people because they had lived a life of purpose and they had developed strength of character that they were able to help younger people. So we're all called to be mentors on some level. We don't have to be, again, we don't have to be on the cover of Time magazine, Person of the Year. It's just, we can just start to prioritize thinking about the welfare of others. That will miraculously solve 99% of our problems. Because then we will be able to chant the holy names of the Lord with a purpose. I want to be empowered by God to be an instrument of His grace. I want to have a purpose in this world to help others who are suffering, because that is the most important consideration that God has. He wants to deliver the suffering souls in this world. He comes as avatars. He sends his representatives. And if we can line our desires with that focus, we will obtain a strength of character and love that will be, that is the purpose of life. It should be to love, to experience unlimited pleasure, happiness. It's not available in self-absorption, trying to exploit the resources of the material nature. It's in giving service that we actually become fulfilled. Thank you very much. And now we have an opportunity to chant. Sorry, I went a little long there. I got a little enthusiastic. So if anyone, you take one question. Excuse me?
The first timer?
Oh yeah, do we have our devoted Sureshwar Prabhu usually passes out Bhagavad Gitas to first timers, and he is in India, or he's in Tennessee right now on his way to India. But we may be able to accommodate someone if they're a first timer and they would like to read some of our literature, and if they don't have. Thank you very much, and please chant with an open heart, asking to be an instrument of grace to make this world a better place. Hare Krishna.